like to introduce you to Mr. Charles Jones, although I can tell you a lot of folks in this county definitely know you. You're one of the most well-known individuals in this area, sir. One of the things that when I was giving background on you that I was very impressed with was this right here behind us, this painting of Brock Mill. Just tell us a little bit about your family's involvement with Brock Mill.
Well, would you like the history of Brock?
I would love the history of Brock Mill.
Well, there's a deed in New Bern that refers to a mill pond in Trenton in 1739. We cannot find a deed prior to 1784 that we can be sure that there was a mill pond here. So we assume there was a mill pond here from at least 1784 to the present. Some of the early owners were Brogdons, Pages, Hatches, and it went through many owners, and it looks like most people owned the pond until there'd be a major storm and break the dam, then they'd sell the pond at that point. And that went on up until 1899. My grandfather and William Henry Hammond actually bought the mill pond at that time. And in 1900, my grandfather bought out Mr. Hammond, and it's been in the Brock family up until we deeded it to the state, and then, of course, to the county. But my grandfather at that time put a sawmill in the southern end of the facility. He had one at the farm he brought over here. He built a cotton gin on this end, and he ground meal for mostly barter at that time. And then later on in 1912, he put a dynamo in the bottom of the mill and produced electricity for the town of Trenton. He did that until Tidewater Power actually bought them out in the 1920s. But they would generate electricity from about 5 o'clock in the afternoon to 10 o'clock at night. And at 10 o'clock, they'd blink the lights 3 times, and you had 10 minutes before the current went off. So, but it didn't take a lot of amperage because the mill at that time generated electricity for bulbs. You didn't have refrigerators and all the other stuff, so it just had light bulbs. And he could generate enough electricity for the whole town. And then, of course, when Tidewater Power came through, they put main lines in enough that hold whatever appliance they wanted. But he continued until his death in 1942, and the pond was deeded to his children. And in 1943, the dam washed out. And so they had to rebuild the mill at that time. And the mill that you see today was built between it was 1944 before they got started. 44 and 46, they used some of the old foundation from the original mill, which actually sat out over the mill run itself. And it was a 2.5 story, and I say 2.5, there's a loft upstairs, building, big old wooden frame building. And of course it was rotten, and when it washed out, it broke the building all to pieces. So they had to replace it, and they put the mill house on this side of the dam and put internal turbines in. There were 2 that generated enough power to run 2 grist mills. And this went on until 47 when they decided to go commercial. So they started selling meal at different grocery stores and all then in 47. And then in 48 and 49, they put on a delivery truck and started delivering meal. They did this until 64 when the mill closed. The new hammer mills are so much more efficient than old corn ground or stone ground mill that they could well outproduce this mill, so it just went out of business for efficiency's sake. They couldn't keep up. But they sold 2, 5, and 10-pound bags of meal in grocery stores. They also had a 100-pound bag of meal that was sale, but all the only people bought that were the bootleggers. The bootleggers would call and
Now what would they use that for, sir?
I have no idea. But anyway, the bootleggers would buy the meal, and they'd meet him on the road somewhere, pay him in cash and no receipt, and leave. So there was no record.
Yeah.
Because the revenue people kept up with meal and sugar if anybody bought a lot of it, so they could catch the bootleggers. But it was a good business because it was cash, and they sold a whole truckload at one time when they sold it.
Mm-hmm.
And this went on until they closed the mill, and a lot of it went down east, eastern. There were, from what I understand, we had a couple of customers west of here, but most of them was down east where the mill went to the bootleggers.
How proud are you that your family has been a part of this, and that when folks around Eastern North Carolina and even North Carolina in general think of Brock Mill or think of Jones County, they think of the Brock Mill Pond?
Yes, we're real proud.
Yeah.
I grew up on the pond, and I visited almost every day when I was a kid. We played down here, skied down here, fished in the pond. And then when I got married, I built a house on the pond. So the pond's been a part of me all my life, basically, with the family connections and with me living on it. And I've maintained the water level since, 61 years. So, and still do for the county. So it's still a very important part to me anyway. I enjoy it. It's a beautiful place and proud to be there. And the pond is a little bigger than a lot of people realize. It's 137 acres actually of ownership, and it's about 125 acres actually of water. And the depth runs anywhere from, of course, 0 to about 25 to 30 feet in some of the holes out there. Wow. But the average depth is probably 10 to 12 feet. The dam is is right at 14 feet. It's 18 feet from the bottom of the run to the top of the dam. So that gives a little idea of the depth of the pond. And it has a wide variety of animals, snakes, bears, deer. There are islands up the pond. And has a good wide diversity of wildlife on it. Good. Some people say it's good fishing, some say no. But anyway, it's full of cypress. Cypress is a dominant tree out there. Some of the cypress trees are over 1,000 years old that are back there. And we're having a core sample taken today. Last week to try to determine some of the age of the trees on the dam by the mill house itself. But some of the real big ones way up the pond are, and I didn't estimate this. One of the forestry people in the state said they were about 1,000 years old. He thought, he didn't drill them, but he said he thought they're about 1,000 years old. So there's been a pond here right good while.
Yeah.
And it's mainly high organic water or tannic acid water. Some call it tea water, but it has a lot of tannins in it, which reduces the fish reproduction, the amount of acid in the water does. It's very similar to Catfish Lake and some of the other areas around here that you have mainly water that drains out of high organic soils, and also the dead leaves and things that accumulate. So it's an interesting place. It's much larger, much more complex than the average person thinks. And it takes a lot more to keep the water level maintained, except when it's extremely dry like it has been lately. But let me back up. In the old days, the barter system was used to buy stuff. Most people in those days didn't have any money. So they would have to bring corn. It'd have to be shell corn. They had a toll bucket, which was about a little over a quart. And they would take a little over a quart, out of a toll bucket, which had about a peck in it. So they were taking about 10% of the corn to grind the corn. They'd put that in the miller's, what they called a miller's bucket, and then they grind the corn and give the corn to the individuals. But in the old days, meal was really a staple in the country areas because the only thing they really bought was maybe salt and pepper and sugar and coffee and tea. Uh, but cornmeal was used in place of flour and everything else. Along all the bread was based with cornmeal because they didn't have any money, and they raised all the other stuff they wanted to eat. Everything was raised right on the farm, so it worked real well in the community. And on most big streams in the old days, there was a cornmeal there. Uh, and this one's just survived longer than most of them.
Now, how old are you, sir?
I'm 84.
84. You grew up here in Trenton.
Yes, grew here.
And I know obviously there are a lot of different things between the way life was when you were a youngster, when you were 7, 8, 10, 12 years old, and now. But when you look back on growing up here and being in Trenton, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in Trenton and in Jones County in the past 80 years or so?
Well, the businesses aren't here that were here then. It used to be 4 grocery stores, excuse me, in downtown Trenton. They were little old country stores. And now we have 1 outside of town in the place of 4 that were in town. There was the post office is actually downtown Trenton. Trying to think, we had a furniture store. We had a lot of other unique stores uptown, and now you don't have any hardly. And there was a bank here. The Bank of Jones was here. And now we do not even have a bank. So a lot of changes, good and bad, have happened. But it's not like it used to be as far as a community that really lived and thrived on itself. We have good people here, and everybody loves the town and all that, but it was a different atmosphere then. And most people shop locally then, too.
What do you love most about Jones County?
The people, the environment that's here, the attitude of the people here. I've been all across the world in many places, but I wouldn't trade any place that I've seen for Jones County.
Wow.
But it's the people, the attitude. We just get along. We don't have, so far, I hope nothing changes, like a lot of other communities are having and all. But we've just got open land, good people, good clean air, and to me that's a plus that you can't buy that.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I think is neat about you is that you own the Brock Motor Company. So you've seen a lot of changes in vehicles and the way they've been sold. Just what are the biggest changes you've seen in automobiles and in cars and trucks and all that in the past, say 50, 60 years or so?
Well, price has been the biggest thing, electronics, but price. When I first started in the business, a pickup truck was less than $1,900. Of course, that was in the 60s too, so early 60s. And everything has changed, the way you work on them, the equipment you have. And used to, the people who worked on them had a small toolbox, and you supplied the rest of the tools. Now they have to have a toolbox big as this wall with all the electronics and things, and each one of those test equipment, they're expensive. When I was still there, we had to buy one that was just a little handheld device to check the electronics, was a little over $10,000. But it's a requirement to be able to check all these different type vehicles. Even though it might refer you to a bigger machine, you still had to use that little small machine first. But it's the cost of operation has just gone out of the roof. And it's the training that has to be done now for a technician. A lot of people can't realize how much training it takes every year to keep them up to the new standards or new changes or whatever. And vehicles are made better than they used to be. People can claim they're not, but Used to, there was nothing on them. And when I first started, we used to put heaters on trucks. They didn't even come with heaters, so
Wow.
much less air conditioning or power steering than anything else. Yeah. It was this basic truck, and I've helped put many heaters on trucks because people out got, we got to have some heat in here. And then, of course, air conditioners came out, and in the late 60s, the air conditioning beginning to show up, which was nice.
Well, especially in the summers here in Jones County.
Yeah, sure, like last summer was.
Well, lastly, I want to ask you about the Trenton Fire Department auction. I know you were one of the people that helped start that.
Yes.
And just take me back to that. Why did you guys start that? And you have to be pleased with the success that it's had through the years too. I mean, it's one of those events that is regionally known, not just here in Jones County, but I mean, all the way up to Raleigh, all the way down to the coast.
51 years ago, we were struggling with funds. We used to go around and go house to house and ask for donations. And we were sitting around struggling with how to raise more money. And we came up with this auction idea and started having it. And the first auction, we cooked, it was either, I think it was 3 pigs, no chickens. And we had it in on the Legion ground. We even had our office outside on a table. Ray Harrison himself ran that. And we sold 400 and, I believe it was 80 items the first year. Now we sell about 1,800 items. We have a flea market that has over 5,000 items on it. We cook 38 to 40 pigs, which is a little over 5,000 pounds of meat. We cook 1,000 halves of chicken. We serve roughly 5 to 5,500 plates of barbecue pork chicken that day. And we have about 6,000 people that attend. So it's come a long way from where we started. But we never thought it would be this way. And we had a lot of criticism from some of the beginners that thought this will never last. I mean, you can't do this. A little old town like Trenton can't support a major auction. Well, it's turned out to be it worked. And this will be our 51st year that we've had the auction. It really, we lost a year because we didn't have it the year COVID was here. We just couldn't have it then. But it's been ever since then. And it takes about 130 people to put it on. So it's not a small endeavor getting everybody to work together and getting everything to function right. And we also have, what was 39 vendors last year selling stuff separate from the auction, all the stuff that they have. Mm-hmm. And they can sell anything but food. We take care of the food. We don't let anybody else sell any food but us. And that creates some unique conversations with some of these vendors.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.